Okay, I think I'm live. Can anybody confirm if they can hear me or not? Can you all hear me? Sound is good. Thank you, thank you. Okay, uh, thank you all for joining. So the purpose of this live stream is to have a live Q&A now that we're in the heart of the gardening season. There's a lot going on right now. So hopefully I can make myself available and answer any questions that you all may have regarding gardening. All right, Aunt Taylor, working a full-time job and trying to build my channel. I need to dedicate time for filming and editing. How do you schedule yours around your job? So I'm generally done working at 5 o'clock Monday through Friday. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are my gym days. So I usually go to the gym from 5:30 to 7, and then I dedicate Monday, Wednesday, and Friday around 7:30 to 9 p.m. to doing these YouTube related things. So that's when I do a lot of my editing for things that I already filmed. Tuesday and Thursday, I don't go to the gym. So usually right after work at 5 o'clock, that's when I go out in the garden from usually 5 until whenever the sun sets and get work done. And then if I have another hour, I will dedicate that to some editing as well. The weekends are usually when I do all of my filming. So I usually try to film 2 or 3 videos on the weekends, weather permitting. Um, so that's basically how my schedule goes. So it's basically roughly 2 hours to 3 hours on Monday through Friday weeknights, and then usually 8 to 10 hours every weekend. I'm working on various things. So that's about what it takes to do this while you're working a full-time job. At least that's how I've done it. Lil Chili, will pumpkin female flower abort if too hot? Yes, they will. There are going to be temperature ranges where pollination is going to be impossible because the pollen itself it becomes too clumpy, so it won't be able to fertilize the female parts. Usually, cucurbits are a little more resistant to this effect than something like a tomato, which really quits on you after 90 degrees. But that being said, you can mitigate these effects by taking the vines and moving them into a shady area or putting shade cloth up above them. James Shirley, Anthony, what is the drink of choice tonight? Aside from water, tonight is a Peroni night. I really like Peroni. It's probably my favorite cliche Italian all-around beer. Katie Trusty, what would you recommend for warding off the cabbage moths? The only thing that really works against cabbage moths is to cover everything with insect netting. But keep in mind that when you do that, there's going to be some amount of larvae in the soil. There's going to be eggs laid somewhere. So when you cover everything with insect netting, eventually there are going to be some caterpillars or worms that bloom underneath. So you're going to have to spray the area with either BT or spinosad, no matter what, because there's always going to be a little bit of penetration. But if you cover everything with insect netting and you spray roughly every 7 to 10 days with BT or spinosad, you should be able to have a relatively worm or caterpillar free cabbage patch. Robert Stashik, how do you handle bugs? Well, that's how I handle worms and caterpillars. For the rest of the bugs, it becomes really difficult this time of year. We just got absolutely crushed with rain. We got killed just now, a little over 1.25 inches in about an hour. So when you get that much rain so quickly, everything washes off, and we're supposed to get rain almost every day this week to some extent. So all you can really do at this time of year, if you get a lot of rain, is check your plants every single day, and it's a lot of manual pest removing. I use a rechargeable hand vacuum to suck up a lot of things like squash bugs or leaf-footed bugs or things like that. And then when we get dry periods, I try to spray spinosad to keep the worms and the caterpillars at bay. Every now and again, if the rain is so bad and the pests are uncontrollable, I will have to wait until about 7, 8 o'clock at night and then spray things with pyrethrin after the bees and other dragonflies and things like that leave the area. Where is Dale? Dale is downstairs. We had probably about 3 hours of thunder, so he was not doing too well and hiding in the in the bathroom the whole time. So he's kind of finally back on the couch trying to relax. Kita G, do you think I can espalier persimmons? Yes, you can. You can espalier any tree, whether it's a fruit tree or whether it is an ornamental landscaping tree. I think persimmons won't be the best tree to espalier, and that's because they make their fruits on the new season's growth. So if you limit the amount of old wood that produces the new wood, you're going to have a limited crop. So same thing with citrus. Trees like persimmons, citrus, figs. I shouldn't say figs. Figs do really well espalier because they're so vigorous. But persimmons and citrus, they do well being shaped kind of like a bush, and very bushy, where they're allowed to put on a lot of new growth every single season, but you definitely can do it. I think apples and pears do better espalier because they fruit on spurs, but that's just my opinion. David Newell, espalier cherry trees. I'm sure you could. I've never grown a cherry tree because my climate is too brutal. I don't think anything will really do well here, but I'm sure you could. I think they'll do a little bit better being allowed to bush out, but you can definitely do it. Okra grows well in the heat. Yes, it does. It's one of the few crops that does well in the heat and humidity and rain, but I don't like okra, so I don't grow it. Have you tried growing horseradish root? No. You need very specific climatic conditions to grow them, and I don't know what they are. I know that they're very challenging to grow, and I don't really grow a lot of horseradish, or I don't really eat a lot of horseradish, so it's not something I've tried. Branch vine. I have an ant pile at the base of my mango tree. I have tried soap, diatomaceous earth, but they refuse to leave. What should I do? Are there any other products? Yes, if you're growing mangoes, I assume you're probably in Florida, so they're probably fire ants. Amdro makes a fantastic fire ant bait. It's awesome. All you have to do is put about 1 rounded teaspoon of that at the base of the fire ant hill. They will take the bait underground, they will feed it to the queen, they will all eat it, and they will all be dead within 24 hours. It's really good stuff, and you don't have to broadcast spread it all over the place. They'll take it underground, and then it'll eventually go inert underground after it kills the colony. I would really recommend, it's called Amdro Fire Ant Bait. It's like $15 on Amazon. It's real cheap, and 1 container will probably last you a couple of years. Why haven't you tried growing pineapple? Because it's way too cold here to grow pineapple, and they take about 2 years to grow. I'd have to grow it in containers, and I already have way too much stuff growing in containers. I don't need something else I need to overwinter in my sunroom. It already becomes so gigantically overgrown in the winter. I just can't deal with another thing to overwinter in there. Meg, tomatoes and peppers are wilting and yellowing and brown around the margins of the leaves. Squash in the same bed are fine as onions. Not sure what is wrong. If the tomatoes are just turning an even color yellow, it's a nutrient deficiency and they need some nitrogen. Giving them a water-soluble fertilizer will fix that. If you have brown dots on the leaves, then it's either early blight or septoria leaf spot, which is very common this time of year. If the whole plant is wilting, then you have bacterial wilt more than likely, and that clogs up the transpiration pathways in the tomato plant, and the plant is going to die, and you need to rip it out as soon as possible. We have gotten about 12 inches of rain since May, and I'm getting bacterial wilt on a lot of my tomatoes. I've already had to rip out 5 of them. It's going to be a really bad year for bacterial wilt with all of this rain. Unfortunately, it's like the deadliest thing you can have with tomatoes. It's the worst. So you really need to pull those plants out if the whole plant is wilting. Rep question: any concern with putting shade cloth on top of greenhouse plastic or on the cow panel roof? Yes, greenhouse plastic already blocks significant amounts of UV. So when you put greenhouse plastic above, you're actually getting some effective shade. So if you put shade cloth on top of greenhouse plastic, you are going to amplify the effects of shade cloth alone. So if the shade cloth already makes your plants a little bit leggy, greenhouse plastic will amplify that effect. So if you have greenhouse plastic above and it's not enough, you have to be very careful when using shade cloth because it can be too much too soon. So what I would do in my case is I have a sneaking suspicion that once I put the greenhouse plastic up on my roof, I can't put shade cloth over the whole structure. I'm probably going to have to get a little piece and orient it to the back so it only blocks the sun after 3 p.m. That way I can get morning sun and then only block the worst of the sunlight. So that's probably going to be what you need to do. Branch vine: how to help fig tree not get transplant shock. You transplant as soon as possible early in the season when they are just starting to come out of dormancy. If you're trying to transplant in the middle of the summer, you're going to want to create a shady environment, like put some shade cloth overhead and give them things like some water-soluble fish fertilizer. Fish fertilizer, I find, really helps with transplant shock. Lalitha, my plum tree had small pea-sized plums, but it fell off. The tree didn't have much flower in the spring. The tree is 4.5 years old. It's a 4-in-1 combo plum tree. I had a bad flower this year on a lot of my trees. A lot of my trees just underperformed this year, especially my citrus. I've had the worst citrus bloom this year that I've ever had. And a lot of my other trees didn't do so great either. And I think it's because we just had a terrible winter. Everything was a month late this year. All of the native trees, the pollen bloom was a full month behind this year. And I think due to the truncated bloom season, a lot of trees were just confused and didn't put on a big bloom. It's been consistent across everything I've grown. A lot of my figs aren't doing well. All my citrus were a bust this year. My persimmons have done kind of okay. It's going to be a decent year for the persimmons, but not nearly as good as last year. I think it's just a product of a bad winter. These things happen, and you just have to stay the course. This is why you have to plant a diversity of things around the yard and garden, because the more you grow, the less of a chance that you have a bad year. For example, my blueberries and my blackberries had the best year they've ever had. They did fantastic. So if you plant enough stuff, something always does well. M. Martinez, I have a Meyer lemon tree that has some kind of rust-looking fungus on it. What do you recommend I use? I thought it was dead, but I noticed new green branches. I would check underneath for spider mites underneath your leaves. Sometimes they can leave dots everywhere. I would bet that you probably have itty bitty little red mites all over the place. And if you have that, you want to spray the whole tree down. Well, first you want to take a hose and blast the whole tree off to try and blow off as many as possible. Then you want to let it dry, and you want to spray a product called wettable sulfur, which is a sulfur powder that you mix in water. You want to spray that all over the tree, and then you're going to want to do that about every 10 days or so, read the product. It'll tell you how often to apply to citrus. It's usually every 10 days or every 2 weeks. Just you have to wait until the sun sets in order to do that. Otherwise, it can burn your leaves, and you can't mix it with any kind of oils or surfactants, or it will react with that and it'll kill your tree. It'll burn it to bits like it's been through a fire. So you have to be careful when using sulfur because it doesn't react well with strong sunlight, high temperatures, or oils. But if you wait until it's sunset to spray, and then you put it in a protected shady location and you retreat it a few times, it should correct the problem. James Sherry, how to use wood ash in the garden. You just sprinkle it around the base of plants that need potash. Wood ash contains a lot of potassium, but the problem with wood ash is it also raises soil pH. So it's usually not a good thing to use for berries because berries like acidic pH, but it can be good for figs, it can be good for tomatoes, it can be good for cucumbers because they kind of like a more neutral pH to slightly acidic. Just don't abuse it because eventually the high pH can become a problem if you use way too much too often. JST Country Girl, have you found that Berkeley tie-dye are prone to blossom end rot? Um, I've only grown Berkeley tie-dye once, and it didn't do well here at all. This year, I'm growing Berkeley tie-dye heart, which is an ox heart cross. It did really well for me a few years ago, and I decided to replant it this year. I don't recall them having blossom end rot. If you're having blossom end rot, it is probably due to inconsistent watering patterns. If your tomato plants dry out, they tend to get end rot because that prevents calcium uptake from the soil. So even if your soil is rich in calcium and you're not having even soil moisture, you will get end rot. So the way you get around that is install drip irrigation and mulch everything really well to keep the soil as moist as possible and try not to allow big fluctuations in soil moisture. That being said, some varieties just get it. Like a lot of plum varieties, the first cluster or two, no matter what you do, will get some end rot. But as the trees grow, as the plants grow and mature, they tend to get less end rot on later flower clusters up the stems. Real Vicky, how are you on growing herbs? Having trouble growing oregano. Oregano is really easy to grow, but they like drier conditions because they're kind of a Mediterranean herb, and really strong sunlight will cause them to flower. So right now, because it's been 95 degrees the last 3 days, my oregano is starting to go into flower. So what you want to do is when everything starts flowering, you want to cut the oregano back, kind of give it a haircut, cut it down pretty low so it's only 2 or 3 inches tall, and then it will grow back and it will grow into the winter. Um, oregano does really good. Oregano does really well planted as an understory herb underneath trees because it really appreciates the sun. So I would recommend you plant your oregano underneath a deciduous tree because it is very cold hardy and it stays evergreen in most winters. So it likes in the winter, it'll get full sun when the trees are bare. And then the deciduous trees, they put on leaves during the summer and that shades the oregano. So if you plant it underneath deciduous trees, it tends to do really well. Tata, question, are container fig trees down here in Florida unfortunately got root knot nematode? Any help? Either you could start a new tree from cutting, or you can try taking the tree out of the container and pruning it back, root pruning, and putting it in fresh mix. But I've never had a fig tree have issues with root knot nematodes here, and I have a lot of problems with tomatoes and peppers here getting root knot nematodes. For whatever reason, the fig trees haven't. Fingers crossed, but that's not something that I've really had to deal with. I'd consider taking a cutting and starting a new tree, or trying to repot it and cut the roots back and see if it comes back. You could also try something like maybe beneficial nematodes that are supposed to work against root knot nematodes, but other than that, I'm not 100% sure. Big Spence, do you recommend metal flashing around the base of fruit trees? I know there are raccoons and possums around. They steal some tomatoes. Cheers. The only success I have had with raccoons and possums is fencing. Fencing everything in. So my garden has been very resistant to them. Insect netting has worked against possums pretty well. They tend to be pretty lazy, but raccoons will claw right through it. So the only thing that I think will be effective is to put some kind of fencing obstacle up around the tree, and then setting out traps to try and catch them and then relocate them. Unfortunately, they are very persistent, very tough. Dejan Nikolic, probably not saying that right. Have you tried growing a loquat tree? So I've avoided growing loquats here because while the trees are very cold hardy, the flowers are not. Temperatures under 25 tend to kill all the fruit because they're a winter flowerer. And there are tons of loquats planted all around the neighborhoods here, and they're basically just ornamentals. There's only been 1 year in the 8 years I've lived here where they've held a lot of their fruit. So I've avoided growing it because they just don't do well here. That being said, I did take a cutting from an ornamental tree that's growing as a community landscaping tree that held its fruit 1 year, and I grafted it onto quince because growing it on quince keeps it at about 5 to 6 feet tall. I haven't planted it in the ground yet, but I'll try growing that just for fun. I'm probably going to rip out a banana that's been no luck for me and plant it there, but I haven't put it in ground yet. Kita G, can you make a video on how to make cuttings of shrubs? I have a lot of fig rooting videos that I made many years ago. Um, a lot of trees don't do well from cutting, and a lot of trees that do, you have to be careful because when you root a tree directly, it winds up being uncontrolled and it can get huge. So I generally only recommend you grow trees on dwarf or semi-dwarf rootstock if you have a smaller backyard like I do, because trees that grow on their own roots often grow unruly. Figs are easy to maintain small, so that's kind of an exception. If you want to learn how to root figs, I have lots of videos on that. Hustler of Carolina, I have a fig tree in a 16-gallon pot. I'm in zone 7B in Charlotte. Can I leave it outside in the winter unprotected? I leave all of my fig trees outside in the winter, but I take them and I move them up against the side of my house. And most winters they do fine. This winter I had a lot of trees die back on me because of that big ice storm we had and the 5 nights that we had in the teens throughout the winter. This was probably the coldest winter since I've moved here, and it did kill back a lot of trees. So it's kind of a risk. I've found that most winters they do fine clustered up against a warm wall of a house, and then you can throw a cover over them. Shade cloth actually keeps them dormant longer. I've had really good luck taking the dormant trees and throwing shade cloth over them as a protective cover. But there's always going to be risk with figs in our zone. Summer Jen Farmstead. Hello from Fresno, California, but currently in Tennessee for the Homestead Festival. That sounds really cool. I can't wait to be a homesteader one day. It is truly my dream. Brady72, what is the sweetest melon variety you've tried? Um, I have not had, if you're talking about watermelons, I have not had a lot of success growing watermelons here because it rains so much here in the summer. A lot of times the flavor's not great. So I'm still finding I'm still finding a watermelon that I actually like. I've had much better luck with smaller melons. So Kajari melons, Kajari, they do really well here because they ripen very quickly. I really like them. And I've had great luck growing a small personal size cantaloupe that only gets this big called Honey Rock. It is fantastic and they're perfect for just two people. You cut it in half and everybody eats half. So I'd recommend Honey Rock Cantaloupe. It's done pretty well here. Since it ripens so quickly, I can usually harvest it in between rain showers. Branch vine, how to protect fruit trees in hurricane strong storms. Pray, cross your fingers. There's no real way to protect them. The only thing that works for me is that I prune everything and I keep it really small. So if you cut everything back in the winter and you keep all of your fruit trees at 8 feet or less in perpetuity, there's not a lot of branches there's not a big branch circumference to whip around. So the best thing you can do in hurricane prone zones is to grow semi-dwarf or dwarf varieties, stake up the trunks with a T-post or something if they don't have good root anchorage, and you just keep them pruned small because smaller trees are just less likely to blow over. But if you insist on growing 20-foot, 25-foot, 30-foot fruit trees and you're not going to prune them, they are going to eventually take damage. Like avocados are notorious for this. So if you grow things, keep them small. It's the only thing I found. Espalier also works really well at being hurricane resistant because there's not a lot of branch material there to blow around. So my espalier trees do really well in hurricanes and anything pruned small. Jean-Luc Cassel, I struggle to grow beets, tried for 5 seasons. I get them to germinate, and then they either die or make extremely small beets, but like 80% die. That sounds like a possible rot issue, or so the way I've been successful growing beets here is to plant them in very well-draining soil, and then you plant them either in August, so they mature in the fall, or the late fall, or you plant them about 30 to 45 days before your last frost date, and you get ahead of them in the summer. So beets don't do well in hot temperatures, but they also don't take temperatures very well in the low 20s or under 20. If you're going to do that, you need to cover them. I got my beets to live all winter long here, putting a frost fabric above them and running a 1.5 ounce frost fabric over them the whole winter long in a PVC tunnel. And they took all the, as long as you don't get below, say, 15 degrees, they'll probably do okay if they're fairly large. But the key to growing beets well is well-draining soil and no extreme temperatures. The other thing is you can't give them any water-soluble fertilizer. So if you're giving them things like fish fertilizer or Miracle Grow or Jack's 20-20-20, they're not going to like that. They grow well in just well-draining soil with very limited organic, slow-release, granular 555 or 444. And you got to plant them for either a fall harvest or plant them in late winter and have them mature in the spring before it gets too hot. Have you grown Carolina Reapers, Mark Oliver? No. I used to like really hot peppers when I went to college. So I did electrical engineering in college, and I had a lot of exchange. A lot of my classmates were exchange students from India and the Middle East. So I grew a lot of peppers there. Then, even in college, I was growing things like Thai chilies, and we would have like spicy cooking challenges and things like that, and potlucks where we would try to make things as spicy as possible. And I used to love it back then, but I have since kind of grown out of the craze, and I don't grow any super hot peppers anymore, except for one fun bush. So this year and last year, I grew the Trinidad scorpion pepper, and I planted them too late last year, and I only got a handful of fruits off of them. This year, I planted them a little bit early, but they're still lagging behind all my other peppers. So I'll grow a few just for fun, but I don't seriously grow super hot peppers anymore. I'm just it's kind of out of my depth now. Roscoe Shelton, fig tree main branches are already lignifying, only branches with figlets. Now tree has vigorous sucker growth. Should I fertilize more to promote the branch growth? Um, Once your tree starts setting figlets aggressively, you may not want to fertilize them too aggressively, because you may encourage more leafy green growth than you want. If it's doing a good job setting figlets, I would just at that point kind of stick to granular organics and maybe some bone meal and just stay the course. What I would do is trim off those suckers. Don't let them grab hold unless you decide you want to replace your main trunk or something like that. If you want to replace the main trunk on the tree, because your existing fig tree main trunk is all beaten up from years of cold damage, you can let one sucker grow and be the takeover trunk. But if your tree is doing well as is, I would remove the vast majority, if not all of those suckers. Low lace. I have a blackberry plant in a container. It's pretty new, but I see some leaves curling in. What should I do? So the reason why most leaves curl is because they're getting too much direct sunlight. So I want you to think of a leaf as a solar panel. They are the solar panels that absorb the sunlight for photosynthesis that creates the plant food, the sugars, the carbohydrates that the plant needs. Well, your blackberries, they're a natural understory cane that grow in forests. So they didn't adapt to grow in direct sun in most climates. So if the leaves are like this, they have maximum surface area to absorb sunlight. But if the sunlight is too strong, what they do is they curve because that reduces their surface area and they take in less sunlight. So that is a sign that your blackberries are suffering stress. Either there's not enough water there, they're in too strong of direct sunlight, they don't have the nutrients to withstand the intense sun. So what you generally want to do at that point is you want to bring them into a location that gets morning sun and not afternoon sun, or you want to put shade cloth above them in order to reduce the amount of direct sunlight that they're getting. So that's actually the plants reacting to too much sun. And tomatoes do the exact same thing. Tomato leaf curl, they do that because they're an understory species. They're a vine. They grow underneath forest canopies and dappled light. They didn't adapt or evolve to take full sun, UV index 9, 10, 11. They just can't handle it. So they curve their leaves to reduce the amount of sun exposure and protect themselves. Can you eat cukes if the plants have mosaic disease? Yes, it's not something that's going to hurt a human. Um, but keep in mind that stressed cucumbers often produce bitter fruit. So taste the fruit. If it tastes good, it's fine to eat. If it doesn't taste good, I would just start new cucumber plants. And cucumbers germinate in 3 days and they start pumping out fruit in 40 days. So they're easy to just replace. Can we grow bush cherry in zone 8A? I don't know what bush cherry is. Do you mean like a Barbados cherry? If so, no. I think they're a 9B, 10A plant. You'd have to grow that in a container. Knox Runner 37. What is the best canning tomato? The best canning tomato is the tomato that is producing the pest in your garden. I don't know what the best canning tomato is, but I will tell you that the best types of tomatoes to grow for canning are determinate varieties, not indeterminate. Indeterminate tomatoes only ripen 2 or 3 tomatoes at a time, so they're actually terrible for canning. You want to grow determinate varieties because they will ripen their crop more quickly. So good canning varieties to grow are Red Snapper, Celebrity. This new variety called Bobcat that I'm growing is absolutely fantastic. So anything that produces large beefsteaks on determinate bushes are going to be a good choice. There are also a lot of determinate plum varieties out there that you can experiment as well. So I would recommend Celebrity, Red Snapper, or Bobcat for production. Bella Rosa is also a pretty good one, but these are beefsteak varieties, so they're not going to be super thick and paste-like. If you want something paste-like, you're going to have to find yourself a Roma determinate variety. God of Woe, advice for desert growers. Um, Grow in the understory, lots and lots of mulching. Find a place where you can get free or almost free wood chips, or hook up with a landscaping company that wants to dump wood chips in your yard. Mulch everything intensely, run drip irrigation, install shade cloth overhead. I've never lived in the desert, but I've spent a few weeks in Arizona, and while it was beautiful, not for me after growing my entire life up on the East Coast. It's just not what I'm used to. So yeah, I would recommend a lot of mulching, a lot of shade cloth, a lot of drip irrigation. See, somebody said San Marzano is the best canning tomato. See, I strongly disagree. I've grown San Marzanos, and the problem with them is they're an indeterminate. And I couldn't get any decent production off of them because indeterminate vines, they only want to ripen 2 or 3 tomatoes at a time. And they produce ripe fruit so slowly that in order to really can using indeterminates, you need to have like 60, 70 plants where you can have a whole lot to can. And I just think that the determinate varieties, they'll ripen 6 tomatoes at a time. You'll be able to pick the fruits much more quickly. And I think a determinate Roma variety is going to produce a lot better unless you have a ton of room and you can grow, 50 to 100 plants. That's different if you have the room to do it. Have you heard of a hugelkultur bed? Kita G. Yes, I actually made a video last month all about hugelkultur, so you can check that out if you want. D Terra, Roma VF. Yeah, I think Roma VF is a determinate variety, so that's probably a better choice for most people wanting to can than an indeterminate San Marzano. And you can say the San Marzano has better flavor, and that's probably true. But you're going to have to grow 3 times as many tomato plants to can with the San Marzano, just because the indeterminates are tough. Fatty Patty Soup. That's an interesting name. I've got my raised bed and shade structure set up. Followed your videos religiously. First year for tomatoes and loving results. Cheers from California. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm glad the videos have been helpful. I'm glad I can share the information. Haley Kidd, what is your day-to-day job? I am an electrical engineer, and my day job is drawing lines on paper. So I design fiber optic backbones for DOTs and other public authorities all over the country. So I do work in Ohio and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Arizona and the Carolinas, and we do Indiana. We go where the work is. So it's a lot of drawing straight lines and boxes on paper. Since usually when I start telling people what I do, their eyes immediately glaze over and they go, "Oh, why did I ask that question? Oh, this is the most boring." It's a it's it's a very it's a very good job. I would recommend it to anybody that's looking for good, stable work that is not super stressful, like being a lawyer or something like that, or a doctor or something like that. So it's a good gig. How is David Walker? How is your pineapple guava doing? Awesome. The pineapple guavas always do great. That is the probably the easiest thing I've ever grown. It just it's just no problem. Nothing bothers it. No insects. The birds don't want it. The It doesn't matter. Ice storms. The cold doesn't bother it here in Zone 8. No diseases. You never have to spray it. I do literally nothing to this thing, and it just makes food. So if you're in Zone 7B or warmer and you want the easiest thing in the world to grow that makes food, try pineapple guava. Just make sure some varieties need cross pollination in two unique varieties. So make sure if you only want one, you get one that is verified to be self fertile. Frederick Von Cold, Jack's 2020 grow good corn. Yes, absolutely. If you're going to grow modern corn, you're going to have to pump it full of something like Jack's 2020, and Jack's 2020 is the perfect thing for corn. Branch vine, have you ever grown a dwarf Cavendish banana? No, because Cavendish is what they sell in every grocery store. And if I'm going to go through all the trouble of growing something in ground, I'm not going to grow something I can just get at the store. Grocery store Chiquita bananas are Grand Nain Cavendish bananas. That's the variety. Grand Nain, Nain Cavendish. So I've just avoided Cavendish because you can get them anywhere. If you're in 9A, I would tell you to grow dwarf Namwa instead, which is the real ice cream banana. It's one of the best tasting bananas out there. So I would grow that instead. Here in 8B, the only banana I've been able to routinely successfully fruit is dwarf Orinoco, which is really good and tastes like a cross between an apple, an orange, and a banana. And they're really dense and thick, so they bake up really well. E52nd Flatbush, direct sun from 12 to 4 only. Best tomato, any tomato. Tomatoes will really like direct sunlight for only 4 hours a day. Unless you live unless you live at a really high latitude, like above 40, in which case you may have issues. If you have a shorter growing season, any kind of cherry tomato will do really well. I can tell you the variety that I'm growing, Bobcat, will love those conditions. Also, the dwarf tomato, Rosella Purple, will love those conditions. Most determinants will do really well in a limited sun environment because they ripen more quickly. Hills Homestead 8A. Is corn worth growing in 8A? In a raised bed backyard garden like mine, no, absolutely not, for anything more than a novelty. If you're going to grow corn and you're homesteading and you want to store the corn, you're going to want a minimum 40-foot by 40-foot plot of nothing but corn, because that's about what it takes to get good pollination, where all of the ears are going to fill out completely using just the wind to pollinate. So if you have that amount of space and you want to save and store the corn for the winter, then yeah, corn is great to grow. But you need the room to do it in a raised bed backyard garden. I wouldn't recommend anybody grow corn more than like a dozen plants here and there just for fun, and you will need to hand pollinate them. Otherwise, they're just not worth it. How tall are you? Not tall. 5'6". Recommendation for cabbage for it to close up quicker. Yeah. So the best way that I have found to grow cabbage, and granted, now I don't know your zone, but here in 8B, the best way I've found to grow cabbage is to plant your cabbage in November and then put them in put a PVC hoop house around your raised bed and then cover it with 1.5 ounce agricultural fabric and let it grow throughout the winter. And here in zone 8, they do really well. And then by the time you can remove that, the cover in March, usually they're pretty far along, and then they will mature in March and April before we get the worm pressure and it gets really hot. That's the best way that I found to grow cabbage. Another possible option is to start your cabbage from seed in July indoors and then transfer them outside in mid-August and then put a shade cloth over them and an insect netting and then let them grow for a harvest in November before it starts getting really cold. That's another option. But in most places, the winter is too cold and the summer is too hot to grow cabbage. So you really need to nail that timing so it matures either in October, November, or in April. And it's a lot harder to get them to mature in October, November if you have a lot of worm and caterpillar pressure. So that's why you really need that insect netting. Stephanie D, hello. Does picking off potato plant flowers help increase production? I have no idea. I've never picked them off before. Usually they fall off on their own, and I do nothing with my potatoes other than give them fertilizer twice a month, and they always do great every year. They're super easy. Play something on the piano. I haven't played piano in years, and I'm afraid I would just embarrass myself. How to grow less spicy radishes. I'm in Horry County. If your radishes are really spicy, you are probably letting them mature too much. So choose a variety that is known to not be super spicy and grow them and pick them when they are young, and they won't be as spicy. What types of things are big no-nos to chop and drop? Okay, any kind of nightshades. So don't chop and drop potato greens, especially tomato greens, pepper greens, eggplant greens. Don't chop and drop any of that stuff. I often don't recommend brassicas either because here I tend to get a lot of plant diseases in the late spring on brassicas. So I wouldn't chop and drop them if you see anything with any kind of disease on the leaves. That really goes for any kind of plant. I also wouldn't chop and drop things like citrus peels. Not really a chop and drop, I know, but I don't like throwing a lot of citrus peels around things because the citric acid can inhibit good bacterial growth. Other than that, I can't really think of a lot of things that I wouldn't chop and drop. It's really just brassicas that have diseases, other diseased plants, and nightshades. Haley Kidd. Wait, I just saw. Where did that message go that I was just looking at? Something about do strawberries have to be well colored? The best way to pick strawberries is iteratively. So when your strawberries get ripe or when they turn a certain color, pick one and try one, and then figure out where they are at the best ripeness and just memorize that texture and color. And that's when you want to pick them. Latarsha Goodwine, how to get rid of spider mites. The way you get rid of spider mites is you hose off the plant with a jet setting on a nozzle really, really well, and then let it dry. And you'll want to buy a product called wettable sulfur. You can find it organic. It's a sulfur-based powder that you mix in water, and then you spray on the plants. You have to coat the plants very well, especially the underside of the plants, and you cannot apply it unless the sun is down. So you have to wait until the temperatures are, you can't spray when it's 85, 90 degrees. That'll cook the plant. You have to wait until the sun is down. So wait until it's in the 70s and the sun is set. Spray the plants really well, and then make sure that you repeat the process for whatever you are treating to the manufacturer's recommendation. So when you buy wettable sulfur, it'll say the frequency to spray tomatoes, citrus, whatever. Just make sure that you follow those application instructions, and it's probably going to take about 3 applications in order to stop the mite process, because the first time you spray, you might kill the mites on there, but there will be eggs hidden somewhere, and they will hatch and they will repeat the cycle. So you need to treat them a few times. Just make absolute sure that you wait until it's darker and cooler out to spray, because sulfur reacts very poorly with heat and sun. And never mix it with anything. It can't be mixed with anything. Sulfur and water, that is it. Ryan Rocks, James's homestead. His homestead is really close to where he lives right now. It's not a few miles away. I think it's about 25-30 minutes from where he currently lives. So and it also has a house on it already. So it's an easy transition for him. I have property all the way down in Florida, so it's going to take me at least 5 years to save up enough money to get a build going. Also, his family lives in the area, so it's kind of easy for him to move to a homestead since he's not making a big life change. All of my family and my wife's family now live in the Wilmington area, so I'm stuck here for quite a while since I have family in the area, and it's going to be a big lift to actually have to build a house from scratch, be down there periodically to check in on the build. It's going to really be something. So in order for me to make that happen, I'm probably going to have to be beyond the point where I have a full-time job anymore. So it's going to be a while. But I'm in no big rush. I like where I live except during hurricane season, and it's not going to be any better there. Stacy, peach tree with leaf curl and 2/3 of the tree leafed out. Many small peaches have started. Zone 5 advice. Once your peach tree gets leaf curl, it's too late. You have to start spraying your peach tree with copper before bud break. So what you need to do is you need to get yourself liquid copper fungicide, and you also need to get yourself a dormant oil or a horticultural oil, and you need to follow the instructions for peach leaf curl on them. You'll see that after your tree gets hit by a hard freeze and it loses all of its leaves and it goes into full dormancy, you are going to have to do a late fall, early winter treatment with copper and the horticultural oil as recommended. And then you're also going to have to do the same thing a couple of times, probably in January or February, in order to treat the tree for leaf curl preemptively. Once the tree leaves out, it is too late to treat it for leaf curl. That being said, there probably will be some recommendations on the copper for a treatment after bud break as well, but you really have to stop leaf curl before it starts. Debbie Thompson, question, do you perform party time or Merlin cucumbers? I'm guessing that means prefer. Out of those two, I like Merlin a little bit better because it's a longer, thinner cucumber. But party time is also really good. I really like it. But if I could only grow one, I would grow Merlin over party time. Luckily, I have a choice and I grow both. What are you sipping on, friend? I showed it earlier. My favorite beer is probably Peroni. So, typical Italian American from New Jersey, stereotype, I know, but it's genuinely my favorite. Nick Bose, if I'm allergic to fish, does that mean I can't use fish fertilizer? I have no idea, and I am not going to give any advice on that topic because I don't know if it's an exposure allergy or what. I truly do not know. What I do know is that a plant that is given fish fertilizer won't become allergenic to somebody that has a fish allergy necessarily, because that's not the way things work. If I eat a slice of pizza, I'm not gonna become part pizza. So biology, the way it works is it breaks things down into the raw elements and molecules, and then it uptakes them. So when you give a plant fish fertilizer, it doesn't suddenly become part fish. But that being said, I don't know what will happen if it gets on your skin, or if you splash some and you accidentally get it on your face or something like that. I don't know. So you'd have to be really cautious. Susie Fuller, intrigued by pineapple guava you mentioned. Any variety recommendation for zone 8B? So the pineapple guava I grow it's a random pineapple guava that I got from Stan McKenzie at McKenzie Farms in Scranton, South Carolina. So he's the guy that I get all of my citrus from. As far as I know, it's not a named variety. It's just a massive tree that he has growing on his property that he propagates, and it is self-fertile, and it makes good fruit. So I don't know what it is, but it's a good variety. You could get that from him. I'm also growing a variety called Takaka, Takaka. It's a New Zealand bred variety, and it is supposed to have unusually large fruit and be self-fertile. Now, mine is only 2 years old, so it hasn't fruited yet. It did flower this year, and the tree is only about yay big. It's maybe 24 to 30 inches tall. So it's going to be a while until it gives me a big harvest. But that's supposed to be a good one, so I'm growing that as well. You can look into Takaka. It's supposed to be a winner. James P. 523, MHC, North Carolina apple trees, third year, doing fine. I replace my peach tree every 2 years because they die. Yeah, peaches are hard to grow here. My one peach I grew a couple of years ago didn't make it, so I've replaced it with a variety called Betty. And so far, Betty is doing well, but it's only been a little over a year, so we'll see how they do long term. I forget what that peach, there's a peach disease that's common around here that kills the entire tree, and I forget what it's called. But you have to make sure that your peach variety is resistant to that. It's like some kind of peach death. Can't remember what it is. Peach tree short life disease. That's it. That could be the issue. So you may want to get yourself a variety that is resistant to peach tree short life. Haley Kidd, do you have an indoor garden? No, I don't grow anything indoors except for the transplants that I start from seed. I just, as much as I love outdoor gardening, indoor gardening really does nothing for me. So it just doesn't catch me. Angel Kins, have you grown little ruby figs? No, but there's what works for one fig works for literally every single fig. So it's not going to be any different than any other fig. Just feed it very well. Figs are some of the heaviest feeding trees that you will ever grow, especially if they are grown in containers. You're going to want to feed them every 10 to 14 days. Give them a blend of fish fertilizer and Jack's 20-20-20, or something similar to Jack's 20-20-20, like an off-the-shelf similar product to Jack's 20-20-20 would be the Miracle Grow tomato, which is 18-18-21. I know a lot of people don't like supporting the Miracle Grow brand, but it's a very similar product. I think Jack's 20-20-20 is a little bit better. It's made by J.R. Peters. That's the one I would recommend. Where's Dale? Dale is downstairs napping. We had a long 3-hour thunderstorm, and he was terrified, shaking in the bathroom for all 3 hours. So he's finally trying to relax up on the couch downstairs. Let me see if I can call him in. Hey, Dale. Daley, do you want a treat? Daley, can I give you a treat? I have a biscuit. I don't know if he's going to come. He's kind of had a rough day. Come here, Dale. Dale, come. Yeah. Usually he comes right up, but it has been a really bad day for him. Really bad day. Well, he's being forced up the steps. Come here, Dale. Come here, bud. There he is. No, come here. Come. Come here. Dale, come up. Come on. Come here. Look. Come on. Up. There's my boy. There he is. Oh, my boy. He had such a rough day. He had such a rough day. He's such a good boy. Let me give you one more. Let me give you one more. Oh, yes, yes. Gentle. Gentle. Oh, so good. So good. Go ahead. You're free to go. So cute. And he's back downstairs. My dogs have been so scared with these storms. I'll tell you, when we adopted Dale, he wasn't this afraid of thunder, but now he absolutely hates it. And this is not a good place to live if you don't like thunder. Linda Moore, where do you live? Wilmington, North Carolina. And we got hammered with storms today. Hammered. Ugh. Gamers Paradise, we have really upped our orchard game thanks to you. Well, thanks to you. You did all the work. I just make goofy internet videos and try to help along the way. So you did all the work. You did all the research. You put in all the time and effort. You deserve all the credit. Do you use isopropyl alcohol to spot kill insects? No, I either suck them up with a rechargeable hand vacuum, or I make a little mix of natural pyrethrin with some dish soap and shake that up and then spray them. And that kills everything almost instantly, even the hard-bodied stuff. So if they're slow bugs, I like catching them with the hand vacuum. But if they're fast-moving bugs, like leaf-footed bugs or something like that, I like the dish soap and pyrethrin spray. Donna Luna, I planted Turkish fig 7 to 8 years ago. It just grows and fruits all the time. This is the first year I fertilized it. I had 400 figs 2 years ago. You must just have really good soil for figs. So figs naturally like limey soil, rich in limestone deposits, since that's kind of where they came from and adapted to. So if you have lime-rich soil, they tend to do really well. Here we live on sand. In the Carolinas, at least in coastal Carolinas. So I have to give them a lot of compost and mulch, tons of organic matter, and that makes up the difference. So if you don't have lime-rich soil, you need a lot of organic matter. Branch vine, opinion on electroculture. If electroculture worked, wouldn't every single farm everywhere have it? Set it up once and then it immediately works. I mean, the way I like to look at things is if there's something easy and cheap that provides great results, wouldn't every farmer all over the world be doing it? So I've never tried. I don't know that for a fact, but for me, when I look around, I don't see anybody that does this for a living and needs to profit off of crop growth doing it. So that to me is a red flag. Take it for what it's worth. I've never tried. Amy T, you're very welcome. Just keep in mind that you did all the work. I just make goofy internet videos, and I'm glad I can help in some way. So I'm glad I can help give some decent advice here and there, but you deserve 100% of the credit. North Valley Rail Fan, what are your thoughts on, I think you mean hugelkultur? I made a video on that last month. So if you look 12 to 15 videos back, I either posted it in early April or late March. I made a video all about hugelkultur. So take a look if you get a chance. It may be helpful. Slimer 213. No, I have never tried using aspirin on my tomato plants. I know Gary Pilarchik with the Rusted Garden has been talking about that for at least a decade. He was one of the pioneers with sharing that throughout YouTube. And I have never actually tried it. I don't know if it works. And the reason why I haven't tried it is apparently it only works on tomato plants. So when I make sprays for my plants, I like to make sprays that are effective on everything because I hate spraying my garden. It's such a pain. So I've never made a tomato specific spray. I know James Prigioni just made a video on it from 2 days ago. I haven't watched it yet, but maybe that's one you'd be interested in watching. I don't know, but I know Gary at the Rusted Garden is like the pioneer on aspirin. So if you want to learn about it, I recommend you go over to his channel. SC, thank you so much for the contribution. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Frida 14, something is eating my gooseberry bush leaves. What can I do to protect it? Cover the plants in insect netting. That is going to be the best, cheapest, and easiest thing you can do. You can get a big 10 by 30 piece of insect netting for about $12 to $15. You can get a 10 by 50 foot piece for $15 to $20. So it's super cheap. Spread it across your plants. Cut it into pieces if you need it, if you need sections to overlap, and then just hold it down with some bricks. Felix Ishkabibble, does Alaska fish fertilizer work on all vegetables, even onions? I give fish fertilizer to everything except root vegetables because I have found that water-soluble fertilizers and root vegetables, they do not mix because it's too much nitrogen all at once, and then you get bad root development. So carrots, turnips, beets, radishes, I would never give fish fertilizer to things like that. I would also never give fish fertilizer to legumes because they naturally fix nitrogen from the air. And if you give legumes too much nitrogen, it can actually kill them. So legumes and slow growing root vegetables is a no, but everything else is a yes. So onions, tomatoes, peppers, leafy greens, brassicas, give them all fish fertilizer. It's great for all that stuff. What fertilizer do you be kind to all. What fertilizer do you suggest for root vegetables? Very little. Usually when I plant my root vegetables from seed, I'll take some granular organic 555, like any brand where all the numbers are close together. So 444, 555, 533, something like that. And I will apply a handful of that along the trenches as I sow the seeds, water it in, and I usually don't fertilize them for the rest of the year. I should add that I rehabilitate my beds when I turn them over with some fresh compost. So, okay, let me amend my statement. So in between crops, when I pull out an old crop, I'll put down a couple of bags of compost and then throw a tarp over them and let them sit for about 2 months in order to break down and settle in. Then when I plant a new crop, I will pull that tarp off. I will direct sow the root vegetables, if that's what I'm planting, into the soil. And then I'll take the organic 555 and sprinkle it along the trench line, add water. And then after that, I generally do nothing but make sure they stay irrigated. And then I just wait for them to mature. That's really all I do. I found that with root vegetables, they thrive on neglect. They do need to be irrigated. Some of them can't take super, super, super hard freezes, but as long as you keep the extreme cold off of them and you irrigate them, they generally grow themselves. And people have trouble with root vegetables because they don't grow fast enough for their liking, and they try to give them too much love, and they pour fertilizer on them, and it messes everything up. Exodroid, thank you so much for the contribution. I really, really appreciate it. That means a lot. What to do with a Z4 property, a zone 4 property with clay soil you found out had huge amounts of Canada thistle everywhere in the spring. I've been digging it out, but I'm afraid to spray and ruin the soil for the future. Okay, so this is what I would do personally. I would resolve that I would have to, so what you want to do is you want to brush cut everything as much as possible. Cut everything down to the roots if you can. And then you probably want to rent a tiller of some sort, and you want to till the hell out of that soil. Till everything under, break everything up. Now, the problem with after you till everything is you're going to take some amount of weed seed and till that into the ground. So that weed seed is going to then want to germinate. Well, what you want to do is you want to get like a big black silage tarp or a huge piece of clear tarp. You want to pull that tarp completely over the tilled area, and you want to let that sit there for a solid 6 months. And you want the heat of the summer to just beat on that black tarp or clear tarp and kill all of those seeds. And then anything that does happen to germinate, you want that to basically suffocate under the tarp. And it's going to take a solid 6 months for all of that to happen, unfortunately. And then if you start now, you will probably be ready to plant for the next growing season. That being said, there's still going to be some weed seed that will germinate the following season. So for the next couple of years, you're going to want to make it a habit to basically tarp the area over the winter to suffocate anything that germinates, and then pull the tarp off when you're ready. And eventually you'll be able to get that weed seed bank really low after a few years. So I hope that that helps. It's going to take a few years in order to fix the problem. And make sure every year you mulch that area really well so the natural weed seeds that blow around in the air naturally, they fall on top of some kind of thick mulch layer and they have trouble penetrating the soil. And that is how you keep that weed seed bank low over time. So the soil will get better over time if you follow those practices, but you really have to commit to it. Stacy, how often do you do these live sessions? So I did some in the spring, once a month. I've been doing them anytime that I tried to get some time. So I actually had a trip scheduled to New Jersey that I was supposed to go to visit family, but our flight was canceled and our entire trip was ruined. Thanks a lot, American Airlines. Plane broke down, and they didn't get us another plane. So I took time off from work. I had a whole trip planned with the whole family, and it got ruined. So I figured I was going to make the best of a bad situation. And we took Dale out to dinner, and we had a nice outing with Dale. And now I'm doing a live stream to try to make lemonade out of lemons. So the reason why I'm doing this right now is I have some free time because my entire weekend and all my plans with my family got ruined. So the answer is whenever I get time to do it. I usually am able to do these more often in the fall and winter because I don't have nearly as much stuff going on in the garden. It's really hard this time of year. But as the season dies down, and I will try to do these more often once the fall ramps up. So hopefully you guys find value in this. I want to do these to give back to all of you guys that have supported me over the years. It really means a lot. I really appreciate your viewership. It means more than I can ever put into words. So hopefully sessions like these where I can interface with you all directly and try and help you. I want to do that because it's just not possible for me to keep up with the comments on the channel anymore. I get hundreds of them a day and I just can't answer all the questions. So hopefully this is a good way where I can say thank you to you all. Hidden Spring Stables is Merlin your all-time favorite cucumber? As of right now, yes, it is my all-time favorite cucumber, but I've probably only ever tried around 30 varieties of cucumber. So I don't want to mislead you and say it's the best ever, because there are hundreds, if not thousands of them, and I'm sure there are better ones I haven't grown. However, out of the 30 or so that I've grown, Merlin is currently my favorite. I'm trying some new ones this year, and I'll let you all know if I find something better. But so far, Merlin's the best that I've ever grown, and you can't go wrong growing it. Clarence Zimmerman, do you mix another fertilizer with fish fertilizer? It depends what I'm growing. So if I'm growing lettuce or brassicas or spinach or other leafy greens, no. Uh, Fish fertilizer is the only water soluble fertilizer that you need. Okay, I did it again. All right, let me rewind back. I give every single plant in my garden an organic slow release 555. Everything gets the organic slow release 555. And if I'm transplanting, I also give my plants bone meal dusted on the roots. But in terms of a water soluble fertilizer, for brassicas and leafy greens like lettuce and spinach, all they need is fish fertilizer. It's a 5-on-1 NPK. There's no reason to give them anything else because nitrogen grows leafy greens and that's what we eat. If you are growing tomatoes, peppers, watermelon, zucchini, anything that flowers and fruits, I have found if all you give them is water soluble fish fertilizer, it is too much nitrogen and not enough phosphorus and potassium, and you'll grow a lot of vines and leaves and they won't flower as well. So for those plants, I like to add to my watering can when I give them fish fertilizer a half strength feeding of Jack's 20-20-20. So half a tablespoon per gallon of Jack's 20-20-20. It's not organic, no, that is true. If you want to stay completely organic, you can give them something like AgroThrive instead, which is more balanced and all purpose. But my personal view on the whole synthesized fertilizer thing is that the whole benefit in organic gardening is not spraying them with the harmful pesticides and things like that, and harsh fungicides and bactericides, the stuff that's actually toxic to humans. There's no evidence that something like Miracle-Gro or Jack's 20-20-20 is harmful to us in any way. Just don't abuse it. So if all you use it is in the recommended dosage once or twice a month, it's not going to hurt anything and you'll get better results. That's my view on the matter. Anthony, what were your top 5 figs 2024? Jeff Wade. Last year, so my number one fig of all time in terms of taste is Italian 258, but last year was a bust for them. I had a bad year. My number one fig all time, best all around, the one that never fails, is Smith. If I could only grow one fig, it would be Smith. My favorite strawberry fig is probably White Madeira #1. So if I could only grow 3 figs, it would be Smith, White Madeira #1, Italian 258, Col de Dame Blanc. You'd probably have to tear my arm out of my socket to get me to pick a 5th. I don't know what I would pick as a 5th. Maybe either Colonel Littman's Black Cross or maybe Noir de Barbentane to give a little bit of variety, something like that. So it's tough, and I don't collect figs like I used to, and there are many more popular varieties of figs. I've kind of been out of the obsessive fig collecting game as I've gone obsessive with every other plant in my yard and garden. So I would tell you Smith is the #1 fig of all time if you live in a place that gets a lot of thunderstorm pressure. And then from there, it's just a matter of personal preference. Chris Hampton, brother, I've been dying to ask, when should I switch my garden over from veg nutrients to bloom nutrients? My tomatoes and peppers are flowering now. Do I wait until fruit is growing? So what I've generally found is if you give your plants bone meal and an organic 555 granular organic, in terms of water soluble feed, all you really need to give anything is a blend of fish fertilizer and a little bit of a half strength dose of Jack's 20-20-20. And if you just stick to those 4 things, Jack's 20-20-20, Alaska fish fertilizer, an organic 555 or close to it of your choice, and a bone meal, you've pretty much has everything covered. You don't really need to stock anything else in your shed. The only other thing I found to be beneficial is crab and lobster shell meal if you have a root knot nematode issue. If root knot nematodes are not a problem in your area, then you don't need it. Kiani Anika. Is it better to dust the roots with bone meal versus adding bone meal to the soil? Doesn't matter, dealer's choice. You can just sprinkle it in the planting hole when you transplant, or you can throw it on the roots directly. Doesn't matter. It's organic, so it doesn't work on day 1. It works on day 21. You know, it takes a while to break down, so it doesn't really matter how you apply it. Moving forward, if you want to amend your soil, you know, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, that's when you sprinkle it around the roots and you just work it in with your fingertips. How do you diagnose root knot nematodes? Dark horse. When you rip the plants out, they're going to have these disgusting nodules all over them. They look like they almost look like marbles growing along the roots. They're absolutely horrible. So if you go to Google image or Bing image search and you type in root knot nematode roots, you'll see them. They just look like tumors all up and down the roots. Nate Dog, your persimmon. It sounds like the roots are sitting in heavy rain and they are not draining well. If that is the case, that is a major problem. So this is an issue here, because you could have one of two problems. The roots could either be sitting in water and not getting oxygen and suffocating, and that can be why your newly planted persimmon is drooping. Or it could be that you waited too long to plant the persimmon, and now the root mass is not established enough to deal with the heat and intense sun of June. So the only way you're going to know is, so take a trowel and move 3 feet away from the plant and dig down and see if the water down there, see if the soil down there is sitting in water and muck. If it's mucky, there's a good chance that your tree is drowning, and you may have to replant it up on a mound or something, or move it to another spot. If the soil is dry and it's well draining, it can be that your plant just can't handle the intense sun being planted too late in the year. And then what you need to do is you need to install some shade cloth over it and mulch it very well. So you're going to have to try and figure that out, unfortunately. Evidence room. How do you prevent crickets without killing them? I mean, you can cover an area with insect netting. That'll keep them off. I mean, the only way to prevent an issue without killing something is usually physical barriers, or to plant something else nearby that they prefer, so they leave the other thing alone. Stephen Schnee, Brandy Boys are absolutely best tomatoes for size and production in 7A. I have been growing Brandy Boy every single year without fail since, I want to say, 2014 or 2015. It is the absolute best. It is my favorite all-time beefsteak tomato. It's every bit as good as Brandywine Sudeth, but it doesn't die like Brandywine Sudeth. It grows just giant stems, and it's so much more disease resistant. FN Rob, thank you so much for the contribution. I appreciate that very, very much. I'm running out of voice. I'm sorry. Matt Lane, I have a very easy answer for you. How to protect your blueberry plants from birds. As soon as your blueberries are done flowering and they set the blueberry fruits themselves, cover the whole area in insect netting, and then hold it down with bricks. That is how I do it. It keeps 100% of birds off of it. You can buy insect netting for $15. It'll fix your problem 100%. It's super easy. Angie Halliday, 7B citrus attempt. I bought an Owari Satsuma grafted on trifoliate, good choice. Planted it in ground. I'm concerned the pickle barrels will freeze. Can I just double up on the Christmas lights? Okay, so I have a couple of suggestions here. So in zone 8, the pickle barrels don't freeze, especially when you make sure they're black. And if they're getting enough direct sunlight, they should melt throughout the day. If you're that concerned about them freezing, you can buy yourself some having a brain fart. You can buy yourself some sidewalk salt, which is calcium chloride, and you can add that to the water, and that will prevent it from freezing. Or you can even put antifreeze in the barrel if you want to do that. Now, if you do that, you have to make sure that that water never leaks on the ground, which means you'll never be able to empty the barrel, or you'll have to pump them out manually using some kind of siphon. So please keep that in mind. Once you put that stuff in the barrel, you can't let that get on the ground or it'll kill your plants. So, and you'll never be able to move those water barrels once they're full. They weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So if you want to fill them up permanently, you can prevent it from freezing using a method like that. But that being said, in 7B, I would think the barrels won't freeze through, and I would just, your first year, I would double up on the Christmas lights and just put water in the barrels and see if they freeze. I don't think they will in your zone. If they do, you can use the salt or the antifreeze. You just want to make absolute sure that you have some kind of battery backup or something, some kind of solar generator or some kind of generator where if you need to run that generator for a few hours to keep them warm to get you through a night, make sure you have that on hand, because Christmas lights are great until the power goes out because of an ice storm. So please keep that in mind. Joe, what do you use as a frame over your avocado tree? So that avocado tree just uses PVC, and I made a video a couple of years ago that showed you exactly how to build that. Let's see if I can find it. Sorry, I have so many videos on this subject that it's going to be hard for me to find. So the title of the video is Easy DIY Guide to Protect Fruit Trees from Cold. And I'm going to drop the link in the chat. The link I just posted in the chat shows you exactly how I built it. Basically, it's just 1/2-inch electrical conduit from Lowe's, and then you pound some 3/8-inch rebar into the ground, and then you stick the conduit into the rebar, and then you bend it over the tree. And I have the exact dimensions that will fit the 120-inch by 120-inch plant jacket over top of it. Yes, Angel, that is true. Fertilize, mulch, repeat. Fertilize, mulch, repeat. It's like that Tom Cruise movie, but less entertaining. Angie Halliday, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It means a lot. Is oyster shell an acceptable replacement for bone meal? So probably if it's finely ground, you have to look at what the NPK is of oyster shell. Oyster shell, what's that company that makes it? Down to Earth, I think it is. Let's see. Down to Earth organic oyster shell has an NPK of, it says it's 35% calcium. Come on, what's the NPK? Can't find what the NPK is in the listing. So bone meal has an NPK usually of 214.0, so it is incredibly high in phosphorus. And the phosphorus is the reason why it works so well above and beyond the calcium. So like something like eggshell is not a fungible replacement to bone meal because it's not the calcium that has all the benefit. That's just part of the equation. So I'm not seeing an NPK on this. So it leads me to believe that it is not an equal replacement. So yeah, I would check for the NPK if you can find it. I'm not seeing any of these products advertise an NPK. So if it doesn't have an NPK advertised, I would say no. I would say it's a fungible replacement for eggshell, but not bone meal. Yeah, Anya T, that's a good point. These the chat texts go by really, really, really fast, and I can only read so many of them. So it's really hard to stay on top of it, and it moves really quickly. Knox Runner 37, do you grow wine cap mushrooms? I don't grow any mushrooms. I've never been into growing mushrooms. I've never tried. Maybe it's something I could try one day, but I have not tried to date. Terry P, when ladybug larvae overrun a garden, does that signal an underlying pest issue? I don't know. It could just be that a lot of ladybugs randomly decided to lay their eggs together on a plant as a community, and it just happened to be that way. It could also signify that you have a ton of pests that are drawing ladybugs into the area, like maybe you're overrun by aphids and it's attracting them. So, to answer your question, what I would do is I would look on the undersides of all of my plant leaves. Usually, pest infestations colonize underneath plant leaves because they cup and they are protected from carnivorous pests, carnivorous insects, as well as the sun. So start checking the undersides of your leaves and look for any leaves that are curling or closed shut. If you have any curling or closed shut leaves, usually that is where they're laying eggs. So just check everything over really well. If you don't have an underlying pest issue and you just have a lot of ladybugs, then hey, happy accident. Anthony, can I reuse my grow bag soil year to year or must I replace it? Yeah, you can reuse it. Usually it'll probably last 3 to 5 years. It may last longer if you amend it with fresh compost and a little bit of fresh peat or core every single year. I reuse my grow bag soil year after year. I just refresh it. I add a shovelful or two of core and a shovelful of two of compost, and it's good to go. Phil McCooler, I have leaf rust on my big beef tomatoes. What can I do? All my tomatoes are officially getting diseases. We've gotten over a foot of rain in the last month, and it's just inevitable. All you can really do is mulch the area really well to try and prevent soil splashing, and also you can consider putting shade cloth overhead. Strong UV and sun stress make plants more susceptible to diseases. I have noticed that hydrogen peroxide spray can be effective at killing tomato leaf diseases, but you have to treat them twice a week. So if you mix 8 to 10 tablespoons of 3% hydrogen peroxide per gallon of water and you spray at sunset, not during the day or you'll kill all your plants, you have to wait until sunset, but if you spray that on your plant leaves at least twice a week, that will start to kill leaf spot. I have several videos on this that I made years ago. If you go to my channel and you hit the little search icon and you type in hydrogen peroxide, you will find my videos on how to do that. Nathan Hefner, Zone 8A, when should I expect to see figless forming? About 60 days after the new growth started. So whenever your plants started to leaf out and put on new growth, about 2 months later. Radishes, mine never bulb. What am I doing wrong? You're probably giving them too much fertilizer. Radishes hate water-soluble fertilizer. You need to plant them in well-draining soil, and the moment you plant them, you sprinkle just a little bit of an organic 555 on top, and then you walk away. And you do nothing except water them periodically. And then 30 days later, you will have radishes. If they are not bulbing, you're probably giving them too much love. Neglect them more. A tiny bit of an organic fertilizer the day you plant them, and then you walk away and you do nothing. Just don't let them dry out completely. TBZ, absolutely no to bees. I do not want beehives. I already have way too much going on to maintain. Plants are hard enough to maintain between this channel and my full-time job. I can't sustain the life of animals that depend on me at this point. Maybe that will change years from now when I move to my future homestead property, and if I'm lucky enough to be able to do this full-time. But at this point in my life, I can't keep outdoor animals alive. North Valley Rail fan. When is the best time to do major pruning on my apple tree? I live in 9B. Absolute peak dormancy. So for you, it's probably going to be like January 1st to January 15th. Probably January 15th. Tom Ross, what foliar and or soil microbiome amendments do you use and or recommend? So, oh boy, I have literally 100 videos on these different subjects, but to be brief, my favorite fertilizers are granular organic 555 or anything close to a 555, bone meal, Alaska fish fertilizer, and for my heavily fruiting vegetables like tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, things like that that don't do well in a permaculture system, Jack's 20-20-20. Other than that, everything gets compost and mulch usually twice a year. That's how I usually treat my established fruit trees. So those are really the 6 secret ingredients: compost, mulch, fish fertilizer, and organic 555, bone meal, and Jack's 20-20-20 where applicable. Vanessa Coleman, I want to plant pomegranate trees. When is the best month to plant? I'm in 8A. Probably either February, March, or October. Usually when you order pomegranates, you're going to order them probably in November, December, and get them in February or March as a bare root tree, and then you plant them right away, probably around March 1st. I think that's roughly when I planted mine. Don't quite remember, but it's doing fantastic. I'm growing a Parfianca, which is very cold hardy, and it's doing great here in Zone 8. Joe, are you going to be selling any fig cuttings this year? I haven't been able to in the last 3 years because I just haven't had time, and it takes literally 100 hours to do it. And working a full-time job and running this channel now to the size it's gotten, I'm probably beyond the point where I'm going to offer fig cuttings anymore, unless something happens and I'm able to do this full-time, which I hope one day I'll be able to, and I will have the time to do it. But I would not rely on me heavily for fig cuttings. I would go to somebody like Harvey over at Figaholics, or you could check out my buddy Phil's Figs. Check out his YouTube channel. He lives 15 minutes from me in Wilmington, so I'd recommend him. Phil's Figs, Philsfigs. He's collected quite a lot over the years, and he has a lot of the varieties that I do. Tips on growing okra. I've never grown it. I don't really like okra. I feel like it's one of those things that you kind of had to grow up eating, kind of like how broccoli rabe is up in the Northeast. Um, so I can't really give you any tips, but I do know it loves heat and humidity. If you want to learn how to grow okra, check out Travis at Lazy Dog Farm. He lives down in southern Georgia, and he grew up down in the South. So he's probably your go-to guy for things like okra, sweet corn, collard greens. He's good at growing that stuff. So I'll give Lazy Dog Farm a shout out. Sindel, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the contribution. Baby fig, 1.5 foot tall, hasn't brown since last year. I think you mean grown since last year. It's in a 2-gallon pot. Should I move it into a bigger pot? If your fig tree isn't growing, it probably needs to be up potted and it needs a ton more fertilizer. Fig trees need massive amounts of fertilizer. You need to feed it in a container every 10 to 14 days minimum. And you also need to give it water solubles. So give it either a mixture of fish fertilizer and Jack's 20-20-20, or a mixture of fish fertilizer and something like Miracle Grow Tomato, something balanced that's around the 20-20-20. Do it every 14 days. Put it in a, let's say, 15-gallon pot, and it will start growing like bananas. I guarantee you, you're not feeding it enough, and it's probably starving to death, which is why it won't grow. Michael Lee, do you think I-258, Adriatic, or Smith would work in New York City Zone 7B and ground? In your zone, yeah, I would try Smith in ground in your zone because it's a fast fruiter. It can recover from dieback and still fruit. That would probably be the one I would try if you want a strawberry or Adriatic type. You could also try Strawberry Verte, which I have never grown, but it's supposed to be, I think, an earlier strawberry fig. Italian 258 is going to be tough to grow in 7B because it is a late fig. If you can give it a head start, it can do well, but in ground, I think it's going to be tough. So, yeah, I would probably go Smith in your zone. And of course, something like Ronde Bordeaux, that's going to be like the pinnacle of a good quality fig for where you live. Shane R., thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Spider Greg, how can I encourage dying potted citruses to grow roots? I don't really know how to answer that question. If it's dying, you have a problem on your hands. I don't know what else to tell you to do other than to pull it out of the container, try and root prune it, and try to repot it in some fresh potting mix. If you have to make sure that your citrus has really well draining potting mix. Citrus in containers do not do well if they hold moisture. So if you're using a moisture retaining potting mix that is high in peat, it's not good for citrus. So a really good citrus potting mix is actually the Miracle Grow succulent and cactus one. That's really good. And when growing citrus in containers, it is important that you periodically let the containers completely dry out. It's like the only thing you let completely dry out. Citrus trees need to be periodically dried out to the point where the leaves actually start to wilt a little bit. So if you are watering them regularly and keeping them moist, you are going to eventually kill your citrus tree from root rot. I hope that helps. I'm sorry, my voice is starting to give out. My vocal cords are shot. Cherokee Case, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that, the contribution. This is our first season ever, and in addition to our learning curve struggles, we almost lost everything in a storm. I'm sorry. How many years did it take you to feel successful and self-sustaining? Never. I still do not feel successful and self-sustaining. I have lots and lots of problems every year. Like I've already had to pull 5 tomato plants this year because of bacterial wilt, because we've gotten a foot of rain already in the last 30 days. We had a terrible citrus bloom this year because of the ice storm we got. I had to replace a jujube tree that died. And every year there's just stuff that goes wrong. And it's the human condition that we always focus on the things that go wrong. I had 5 or 6 fig trees get killed down to the ground because of the ice storm that we got. I mean, there's always stuff that goes wrong, and we tend to focus on those things. So the answer is never. And no matter how long I do this, I'm never going to feel successful. And I'm always going to beat myself up and focus on the failures and tell myself I'm terrible. And that is just the reality of being human. I think we can do 99 things right, and we focus on the one thing that we fail at. And all you can do is call yourself out on that BS and tell yourself you're doing that thing again. You don't deserve to beat yourself up like that. And you have to talk yourself out of that death spiral and focus on the things that is going right. And sometimes the way you do that is by taking some time off work and spending that with family and disconnecting. Sometimes it's spending that time in your garden. Sometimes it's spending that outdoors hiking. You just have to give yourself a little bit of you time and realize that we are all prone to that type of negative think. And when you learn how to recognize when you're falling into those patterns, it becomes a lot easier for you to dig yourself out of those holes. So while I still beat myself up and I get down on myself, I've gotten really good at calling myself out on that and not letting myself beat myself up too badly. And then I try and focus on the things that are going right. And sometimes that involves you sitting down and writing down 10 things that you're thankful for. And if you take that approach, you will learn how to savor the successes as much as anything else. And it's important to know how to do that because it's a learned behavior. So, roundabout way of answering your question is you're never going to feel like a success, and that's okay. Take time out of your day and force yourself to write down things and acknowledge things to be thankful for. And over time, you will get better and grow as a person. And I walk outside now and sometimes I'm like, wow, I did all this. And you do feel a positive sense of pride for that, and it will come. Just don't quit, and you'll do great over time. V. Pete, how do you manage water and nutrients when it's in rainy season? That is the bane of my existence. All you can do is mulch everything really well. And when you get dry patterns and you think you're going to be in a 2 or 3 day dry period, that's when you give the water soluble nutrients. If you look at my videos and you look around my container garden where all my grow bags are, you'll notice that I have a white tarp down underneath all of my grow bags. And the reason why I did that was I got sick and tired of heavy rain washing out all of my nutrients. So I put down that tarp so when my grow bags wash out, they sit in that puddle of nutrients, and then it gets invariably 95 degrees the next day, and they reabsorb the nutrients. So that $50 tarp I bought has probably saved me $200 in fertilizer over the years. Dirty South Maid, are you ever going to sell fig cuttings of the varieties you've created? Okay, so this is what's going to happen if I start releasing fig cuttings. The early adopters of the fig cuttings are going to say that these are my fig cuttings, and they're going to put them up on FigBid, and because I have some level of notoriety, they're going to start selling for like $400, and it's going to annoy me. So there are 1,000 different fig varieties out there, and 900 of them are really mediocre. And I'm not going to release any fig cuttings that I think are mediocre because there are enough good figs out there, and I don't need to flood the ecosystem with stuff that's going to sell for hundreds of dollars and not be great. So the answer is yes, I will release the fig cuttings to people if I think that they're actually worth sharing. If this fig breeding experiment just, if they're nothing but 6s out of 10s, there's no point in me sharing them because all it's going to do is wind up sucking a bunch of people's wallets dry for something that's not great. So they just started fruiting in earnest last year, so I'm going to evaluate them for probably like another 3 or 4 years. And then in 3 to 4 years, if there's good stuff there, I'll release them because I'll be able to sleep at night knowing that people are spending way too much money on something that's at least really good. Alicia Knight, how do you prepare surround WP and apply to the garden? I have a video coming out tomorrow on that. So stay tuned. I have a video coming out tomorrow all about squash vine borers and surround. Ooh, sorry, my voice is starting to fade on me. Alex Hui, I have 10 plus 4-year-old Yutsu trees doing really well, but they're in grow bags. I would get them out of those grow bags as soon as possible. Because what is going to happen is those grow bags, the roots of the citrus trees are going to weave themselves into the grow bags, and you are never going to be able to get them off. You are going to have to cut off painstakingly all of those grow bags. And here's the problem with citrus. They hate root disturbance. So what is going to happen is if you try and tear those grow bags off, you're going to damage the roots of the citrus, and you are probably going to kill several of your trees. So I would try and get them out of the grow bags as soon as possible. And if they're not ready to grow in ground, put them in hard nursery containers. I know hard nursery containers cost 5 times more than grow bags, but they are the only way to grow citrus. Otherwise, you're going to kill them when it comes time to remove them. Hunter Vickers, how do you combat blossom end rot? Lots and lots of mulching and drip irrigation. People think blossom end rot is caused by lack of calcium in the soil, but it's actually caused by calcium uptake problems. Soil is rarely truly deficient in calcium, especially if you use any organic all-purpose fertilizers, because they contain plenty of calcium. You're getting blossom end rot because your tomatoes are drying out too much, and then you water them and then they get too wet. So those fluctuations in soil moisture is what is causing the calcium uptake issues. So you want to run drip irrigation, and you want to mulch very thickly, a solid 3-inch thick layer of mulch, and then run that drip irrigation, water them deeply for a long period of time. And if you keep a consistent soil moisture and you never let them dry out, you will minimize blossom end rot. Sometimes some varieties of plum tomatoes, no matter what you do, the first few fruit clusters will get some blossom end rot. It's inevitable in some varieties. They're just prone to it, but they will grow out of it after the first few flower clusters. Trophy wife, thank you so much for the contribution. I really appreciate it. I've learned so much by watching your channel. I've got a bumper crop of tomatoes. This is my 6-year first successful crop of beefsteaks. Congratulations. Great job. I'm glad to hear it. And the good news is it only gets easier from here. Once you figure out how to do it in whatever climate that you have, you just copy the successes and it becomes self-sustaining. Nita Babcock, you're welcome, but your garden is doing great because of you. I may have made some videos that gave some helpful advice, but ultimately you're the one doing all the hard work. So congratulations. Kelly Kraus, Blossom drop is caused by lack of pollination. Since you're in Florida, everywhere in the state of Florida right now is too hot for pollination on beefsteak or large slicing varieties. You need days under 90 and nights in the 60s or cooler to get adequate beefsteak pollination. So the only way you are going to get some pollination is to grow either heat-resistant varieties and then grow them under shade cloth, or to grow cherry types, because a lot of cherry types can still pollinate when it gets wicked out. So strongly recommend stringing 40% shade cloth above your tomatoes. If you put them under shade cloth, you will get some partial fruit set here and there. You'll probably still lose 70 to 80% of your blossoms, but 20 to 30% may still set. Under shade cloth, you're going, without shade cloth, you're going to get 90+% blossom drop at this point in the year, except for some super heat resistant cherry types like Super Sweet 100. They can still somewhat partially fruit in Florida. All right, y'all, I have a couple more minutes left in me, but my vocal cords are literally about to give out after 2 hours. Alfalfa pellets on potatoes, river neff. So alfalfa pellets are basically a precursor to fertilizer. A lot of fertilizers contain alfalfa pellets. So if it works for you, I don't see any reason why, you wouldn't use them. Just keep in mind they take a while to break down. So, adding them in the last 30 days before harvest probably won't do anything. You need to add them at planting time. Be kind to all. You're very welcome. I hope I could answer some questions and help some folks. Slim Futures, 5 best fruit trees if you can only have 5, 9A, Jacksonville, Florida. Asian persimmon, number 1. Fig, number 2. Some kind of HLB resistant citrus, like I would probably try a sugar bell in your area. A cold hardy avocado, like maybe a Stewart. And if I had to grow a 5th, oof, boy. Yeah, got me on a 5th. I'm completely blanking right now. Maybe an Asian pear. Maybe I'll go with Asian pear as number 5. Thank you, Exodroid. I really appreciate that. I'll try to answer one more. Oh. Carol, I planted an Alberta peach tree last fall. It had so many peaches and they dropped them all. Yeah, good. I'm glad it dropped them all, because if it carried all those peaches, it probably would have harmed the tree. So the thing about fruit trees is when you plant a fruit tree, they want to spend about the first 1 to 2 years really establishing a root structure. You really want them to grow down below before they grow up, just like you can't build a giant house on a little tiny foundation. So the reason why they drop the fruits, thankfully, is because they naturally self-thin. Otherwise, if it tried to carry all of those fruits on a little tiny root structure, it could not only rip the tree over, it could actually kill the tree through too much success. So generally, you want to make sure the first 2 years or so, it wouldn't carry more than 1 to 2 peaches anyway. 0 is actually a really good number the first 2 years. So you don't want your newly planted grafted fruit trees to really carry a significant crop until at least a full 3rd year in ground, honestly a 4th year. So once you get to about year 4, that's when your peach should start really carrying a crop in earnest. So that's not a bad thing. In the future, if you ever plant a fruit tree that it tries to fruit heavily that first year, you really don't want it to do that. The only fruit tree that I have found that does well year one carrying a bumper crop are figs. They are the one exception. Anything else, let them go a couple of years to establish those roots before you let them grow and fruit heavily. Thank you so much, Beth. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Nix, do you follow the Farmer's Almanac? No, not really. No. I kind of keep my own records every single year. And I have a weather station, so I download all of the weather information. All right, Branch Fine, I'll answer this last question. Will Chicago Hardy fig do well in 9A Houston, Texas with all of the humidity? Chicago Hardy is one of the most rain-resistant figs that you will grow. So I can grow a Chicago Hardy here, and you get half the rainfall, maybe less than half the rainfall I get. So it'll do fine. What's Dale's favorite scotch? The mocktail stuff. That's his favorite one. Scotch Tate. The Teenage Gardener. Have you ever used pine shavings animal bedding as mulch? No, because it's really, really expensive, and I would go broke using that as mulch. But that being said, you can use it as mulch if you have some left over from animal bedding. It's totally fine. All right, y'all, I got to call it quits a little after 2 hours. Thank you so much to everyone that joined. I really appreciate it. I hope I was able to answer your questions. I did my best. I will try to host another one of these in the near future. I really appreciate you all joining. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your support over the years. It really means a lot. Like I said, I'll try to have another one of these while we're in the midst of the summer growing season. Thank you all. Thank you. I really appreciate it.